Facepalm America. I'm Beowulf Rockland. FacepalmAmerica.com is, as always, the place you can go to listen to past episodes, connect with us on social media, and find out more about the show. Thank you so much for listening today. I really appreciate it as February comes to an end and the week begins. We speak again with John Rothmann, the host of Around the Political World with John Rothmann. John, welcome back to Facepalm America. Thank you so much for being here.
May I say it is always a high honor and great personal privilege to appear with you, Beowulf Rockland.
Thank you so much, sir. And there was a little contest over the weekend in the Republican Party from the Southland in the state of South Carolina. Donald Trump and Nikki Haley went up against each other in a primary contest there, and the results were very interesting indeed.
60-40. Donald Trump had 60% of the vote, Nikki Haley 40% of the vote. She is going to limp along until March 5th, Super Tuesday. Then I expect she'll suspend her candidacy, as did Ron DeSantis, both having the glimmering hope that something will happen to Donald Trump and they will once again be able to activate their candidacy and stand at the convention.
Now, there are those that are saying that the fact that Nikki Haley got 40%, and again, this is her home state, the state where she was governor, against Donald Trump's 60%, is a warning sign for Donald Trump that the party is not as unified as one would think behind him. What are your thoughts in that way?
Oh, I agree. Somebody asked me, I had some friends visiting from New York who dropped by to see me, and the wife, who I'm very close to, said, "I'm so afraid that Donald Trump is going to win the election." And I said, "Karen, don't worry. He's going to lose." She said, "Why?" And I said, "Because the Republican Party isn't united." Because do you remember in 1960? No, you're too young to remember that campaign, Beowulf. But the Republicans put out a thing. Here's what the Democrats say about Kennedy. And it was all the anti-Kennedy stuff. Well, that's what is going to happen now. All of the anti-Trump stuff will be recirculated by the Republican Party. You know, the greatest boon they had was Nikki Haley. I mean, she blasts Trump splendidly. Yeah. And my expectation, though, is that although Trump, it appears, is on track to win the nomination short of something happening, I don't think he can win the national election. And people say to me, what about the polls? Let me tell you, this guy has alienated so many people. Can you imagine standing up at a convention of African Americans and talking about mugshots and comparing himself to African American mugshots? I mean, I know he has said more outrageous things, more egregious things, but in the end, I really believe the American people vote as much for as they do against. And people are going to turn out at the polls to vote against Donald Trump. And I believe that with all my heart.
Do you think that Republicans will stay home if they feel that way, or do you think that some of them will actually vote for Joe Biden? How do you think the alienation will play out specifically?
I think a lot of people are going to go to the polls and vote for Joe Biden because they understand the only way to redeem the Republican Party is to defeat Donald Trump massively. And I think most Republicans, when they look at Joe Biden, do not view him the way Sean Hannity or Mark Levin or even Donald Trump do. They view him as relatively benign. His policies have not been off the rails. They haven't been too far to the right, too far to the left. Joe Biden's always been a centrist. I think the other concern that people will have is, are they voting for Biden for president or Kamala Harris for president? And I think the answer is, whether Trump or Biden wins the election, the vice president is going to be critical. The actuary tables, if you're an insurance agent, you know if you're over the age of 80, your life expectancy is not great. By the way, I'm going to turn 75 on March 2nd, so I will be approaching that age. But Beowulf, you may not believe this, but for the last time in my life, I believe, I will be younger than both candidates for president. So I want to announce now my intention in 2028 to run for something.
Well, I don't know. Given the trend lines we see, you might be in the younger sect. The way things have been playing out, my goodness, I can't imagine how it could keep going that way. But you know, I didn't expect it to get this far, so you never know.
Let me also, if I may,
please.
raise the other question. Not only is Donald Trump on the road to being the nominee, although several things could disrupt that, but I want to say a word about the Republican National Committee.
Indeed.
As you know, Ronna Romney McDaniel is stepping down on March 8th.
Yes.
She is leaving because Donald Trump wants her out. Donald Trump is putting in the current party chairman in North Carolina, who is an election denier and a big Trump supporter. And as vice chairman or co-chairman of the party, he's putting in his daughter-in-law, Laura Trump. All I can say is when the Republican Party becomes an enterprise of the Trump family, we're in trouble. But it's true. Donald Trump Jr. said on the ellipse on January 6th, this is no longer the Republican Party, it is the party of Donald Trump. And sadly, and I say this not because I am a Republican, I'm not today, I'm a Democrat, but sadly, it is a terrible direction for the two-party system in America.
It is indeed, and it is worrisome to see Trump family members so high in the echelons of power in the Republican Party because, as we know, he has some financial troubles. And
but he's a multi-billionaire. What are you talking about, Beowulf? Come on, give me a break. Do you remember the man who said, I won't have to raise money, I'll pay for my own campaign? Right. Hey, what happened to that guy?
Well, apparently he's had a few bills come up recently. 91 indictments. Yes.
He has spent, I'm told, about $50 million of money that has come in for his campaign on legal expenses. Mm-hmm. This is a man of high integrity and honesty. There's no question about it.
Indeed. And there are concerns legitimately that essentially the RNC could be turned into an ATM for Donald Trump. And I think they ought to be very, very careful about that because
they don't care.
Yeah.
I want you to understand the Republican Party today is a subsidiary of Trump Enterprises. Yeah. And Donald Trump is going to make sure he can get his bills paid by the Republicans. He's been doing that anyway. I'll tell you, it is so shocking to me, so incomprehensible to someone like me who's a political junkie. Beowulf, I've taught courses on the Republican Party. In fact, today I'll give a lecture in which I will lay heavy emphasis on the history of the Republican Party. And all I can tell you is Republican leadership, if they are looking down from heaven, must think, I can just imagine all the former Republican presidents sitting around together talking about what the heck is going on with our political party. Yes. And for those who were devotees of Ronald Reagan or of Dwight Eisenhower or of Richard Nixon, this is a tragic moment. But do you understand? It's not just the Republican Party. It's the American people. We are a system based on a two-party system of government. And if one of those parties doesn't function, it hurts American democracy. So my hope is, and I'm going to say this very bluntly, I hope the Republican Party goes down to a crashing defeat. Presidency, House, Senate, just whipped completely, so that on the day after, the Republican Party will have to assess where it stands and how it will rebuild. That, to me, is going to be the real question. Will the Republican Party rebuild itself in an image which is acceptable to the American people? And will there ever be an apology for what the Republican Party leadership has put us through? This is a real question.
I think it's absolutely necessary that they be defeated and defeated soundly in order for a healing process to begin and a self-examination to begin and a recovery so that we can continue to have a stable political system in this country. Because without a Republican Party, we don't look to have one whatsoever. I mean,
but there would have to be another party created, and I think we're not going there. I really think, and let me tell you, if I were younger and if I had any sense of political ambition, I'd re-register as a Republican and I'd run for Republican Party leadership. The most improbable notion was in 1940 when the Republican Party was an isolationist party that nominated an internationalist, Wendell Willkie, for president. And I come back to this because right now the Republican Party faces another problem. They are preventing Ukraine from getting the money Ukraine needs and the weapons that Ukraine needs to fight an effective war. Let me tell you, do you remember in 1952, the slogan was, "Who lost China?" Yeah. And that was a big thing the Republicans raised against the Democrats. Well, there was a real question mark there, but there won't be any question now. If Ukraine is lost, it will be the fault of the Republican Congress. And if I were leading the campaign of the Democrats, I'd be running against that good-for-nothing Republican Congress, reminiscent of what Harry Truman did. What the Republican Party is doing now is shameful. But I want to say one positive word about Donald Trump. The whole question of in vitro fertilization. And I'm telling you right now, Beowulf, there are a lot of people listening to us who have had in vitro in order to produce a child. And I can only express myself this strongly by saying Donald Trump is absolutely right. We ought to embrace the idea of in vitro fertilization. Thank God Donald Trump had the courage to stand up and say it. It's causing the Republicans now to rethink how they're going to respond. Can you be pro-life? And, well, the thing with Nikki Haley is so stunning to me. Both of her children were produced by in vitro, as she herself has said, a boy and a girl, now grown up. And she was saying that an embryo is a human being.
Yes.
Although she said, but I don't agree with the Alabama court. Although she finally said that only after all this heat came on. Look, let me be blunt. There is nothing more pro-life than wanting to have a child. And if in vitro fertilization assists people who cannot have children to have children, God bless them. And did I use the name God? Darn right I did.
And yes, and just for those who haven't heard it yet, because it happened since we talked the last time, the Alabama Supreme Court has ruled that frozen embryos are children. And what was just stunning about this ruling and the arguments that were issued by that court, they were using not quotes from the Constitution to justify their decision, but quotes from the Bible and Christian religious tradition.
That was the Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court.
Yes. It's just stunning to me that essentially they hold one religious text higher than the law of our land and the established Constitution of the United States.
Did you hear what happened at CPAC? At CPAC, when they opened it up, they weren't talking about the Constitution. They were talking about America, and they were holding up the cross as if America should follow the cross.
Yeah.
If I wanted to follow a cross, I'd belong to a church.
Yeah.
But as far as I'm concerned, in the United States, we follow the Constitution. We believe in a strict separation of church and state. We believe that a person has the right to believe or not believe as they see fit. That's the essential nature of the American system. And for the Alabama Supreme Court to offer that ruling was stunning. And for Nikki Haley to waffle was even more peculiar. And I hate to say it, but God bless Donald Trump for standing up and saying no, because it gave the opportunity for Republicans to do the same thing.
Yeah, at least in that very narrow way. I think the decision has broader implications even than in vitro fertilization. But certainly on that, he was absolutely correct that they had gone too far. But it's just an absolutely stunning ruling, and I sincerely hope that the U.S. Supreme Court will there's legislation
now in Alabama being introduced by a bipartisan group to overturn the Supreme Court decision. I don't know how it works in terms of the Alabama Constitution, but I sure as heck hope they can. And by the way, at CPAC, did you hear everybody trying to get the nomination for vice president with Donald Trump?
Yes.
At least Stefanik.
It was tryouts. It was like a talent show. It was like, I was in high school again, and they were running for class vice president or something like that. It was so silly to watch.
Yeah, but I understand it. If I were a Republican and I supported Donald Trump, like Vance in Ohio or Stefanik from New York, you know what I would say? I'd love to be vice president to an 80-plus-year-old man who could die, and then you become president of the United States. Makes good sense. I mean, good political sense. And can you imagine if Vance... Oh, my God. Have you listened to this guy talking about Ukraine? Oh, you know what he said? He sounded to me like Neville Chamberlain. It's a faraway country. We don't have any